After revisiting the point-and-click game adaptation of Harlan Ellison's I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, Ted's psychodrama reminded me a bit of the Smitten from Slave Princess. There isn't a direct point of comparison, it's more that both Ted and the Smitten share the fantasy of playing their beloved's knight in shining armor. And this fantasy has interesting implications and results for how it guides or shapes both Ted and the Smitten in their respective stories. Before Ted wound up as one of Am's playthings, he was a silver-tongued con man that often spent a lot of time as a womanizer and a gigolo. It didn't matter who the woman was. If she was wealthy and had something Ted wanted, their relationship was purely transactional. Ted traded his charms and amorous abilities for material possessions and luxury. Besides his love life, Ted tried to play the role of an affluent, well-connected man. He bragged about having a big house and jet skis. He presented and dressed as a rich man, from his designer clothes to posh language and mannerisms. If he couldn't actually be the grand, virtuous knight in shining armor, he pretended he was the above-everything and everyone, rich, powerful socialite instead. After Am destroyed the world as he knew it, and took Ted prisoner, Ted was crushed up and broken down over and over again. Ted was already a self-interested person with little to no qualms about using and exploiting others for his own gain. Before, he might have excused his behavior with rationale like the women he romanced were using him as much as he was using them. His victims should be a little smarter and self-aware. They would probably turn on him the same way if given the opportunity. After getting pulled and stretched like Play-Doh, Ted's low-key belief that the world could be dog-eat-dog became the core paranoid belief that everybody was the same predatory, lack of moral fiber character he was. He can't trust anyone. Everyone would backstab and use him the same way or worse than he might with them. The one exception is Ellen. Whether it's because she's the only woman left on Earth, their proximity, or genuine attraction, Ted falls in love with her. If he ever had a moment to breathe, he would mull over how real his feelings are, and what it might look like if he was able to express himself, to explore what an honest, symbiotic relationship might look like. What does it mean to earnestly, truly love someone else? Each psychological drama, in I Have No Mouth, tries to act as a specific, tailor-made adventure that can give the character involved what they want most if they can overcome dilemmas that play on their greatest hopes, dreams, and fears. If the character chooses things that align with what they see as the height of their moral character and best self, the psychodrama brings a sense of closure. It reassures the character involved that Am has not completely broken and torn them apart. There's still a hoping, dreaming human that will fight back against this all-powerful tormentor god. Am plugs Ted's dreams of chivalric romance at the center of his dark, spooky castle mystery. Ted has the opportunity to play the chivalrous knight he dreamed of being when he was younger. The chivalrous knight is earnest, loyal, and true because of how much he loves his princess, whether she reciprocates his affections or not. She's an ideal, or an icon, a motivator. His challenge is whether or not he will place her needs and welfare above his own, to really do what is best for her sake. In the drama, Ellen is a bedridden princess, caught between an evil witch, a conniving devil, a demon, and an angel. Ted is the questionable hero that will either lead to her ultimate rescue or devastating demise. Ellen requests that he find her hand mirror. She needs a mirror to break her stepmother's curse on her and finally leave this wretched, mortal coil. When the scullery maid asks Ted to sleep with her in exchange for a mirror, he must turn her down. He must resist striking any kind of deal with Ellen's witch of a stepmother, whether it's sleeping with her in exchange for favor or playing a role in her ritual to summon Surgot, the opener locks. When Ted uses the witch's circle to summon Surgot, he refuses to trade Ellen's soul for Surgot's offer of a portal to the surface world. The castle is full of tricky, transactional deals that made up the pattern of Ted's former life. All of them feel a little too easy, with the dangling carrot being escape is tantalizingly close if Ted backstabs Ellen in some way, either directly or conceptually, and is playing with how high a regard Ted holds his feelings for Ellen. It's fickle, right? It's something that Ted would willingly betray, toss aside, or trade for just the right price. As the ultimate misanthrope, Anne probably thinks of concepts like chivalry is flimsy and pathetic, a mental exercise that someone like Ted uses to make himself feel better about how pathetic and small he is. Ted has to prove to himself that he can be the disciplined, infallible hero. It doesn't have to be just a passing whim, or a mask he wears to enhance his charisma, or don as some kind of glamour. He can do the right thing, even if there isn't an immediately available reward. If Ted can come close to being a true knight in shining armor, he defeats Anne's low expectations of him and his own weak perception of his character. Ted's drama also toys with how the damsel in distress story reflects how patriarchy objectifies women, even without the man wins a woman's affections part more modern stories end with. Everyone is competing for Ellen's soul, and holds an opinion on where she should end up. Parties advocating for Ellen have more say over her fate than she does. Even the witch and the scullery maid use Ellen as some kind of currency. She is a commodity that's exchanged for status, power, freedom, or any number of abstract concepts and ideas. While Ellen has a high premium, she's too weak and fragile to fend for herself. Her situation encapsulates the catch-22 any minority group finds themselves in when anyone besides that group is discussing them. They're simultaneously powerful and weak, a threat and insignificant. All that said, I Have No Mouth struggles when it comes to portraying Ellen herself in the story overall, especially in her own drama. I'm ill-equipped to discuss or unpack this topic with the care and complexity I think it deserves, so I'll leave links to any articles or videos I can find that fully addresses and discusses Ellen. It's dubious if Ted really loves Ellen. If Anne's simulation was an accurate reflection of how Ted views himself in the world, even if it gave Ted closure, he still didn't fully understand Ellen's situation or who she is. His drama was a primer on the misogyny women deal with, and where his former worldview or ideas fit within a patriarchal framework. So, it was a start, and the way the world of I Have No Mouth works, a good start is probably the furthest any character will get. In a nutshell, I think Ted's vignette was an interesting attempt at highlighting the gaps in a man's fantasy of playing the chivalrous, heroic knight. Ted relied on the fantasy as a guiding light or a picture of who he wished he could be. It actually served as a template to help him realize his faults and start to become a better person. It wasn't the end-all, but a helpful parable. What happens when a being firmly believes he is the chivalrous knight? There's no critical eye or looking at his role from a distance. He's a living, breathing character, full stop. In Slay the Princess, the player character / protagonist, who I'll be calling the Quiet, has many internal voices. The game starts with just the narrator and the hero. The narrator and the hero are an ever-present fixture. Granted, the narrator is a separate, omnipresent entity. He's a third lead character in his own right, but usually only the Quiet can hear and interact with him. So the narrator and hero are present for just about every possible scenario. More voices show up depending on the actions chosen and the route itself. Many of the additional voices are thematic complements or counterparts to specific variants of or forms a princess may take. For example, the voice of the opportunist is the counterpart to the witch. The opportunist's strong self-interest and calm man's senses match how suspicious and spiteful the witch is. If a route branches into Chapter 3, or yet more complicated branches, more voices chime in, and depending on how many times Quiet dies, it can reach a point where everyone shows up. The voice I'm interested in discussing is a Smitten, Arguably, the Smitten is both the most vocal and the strongest personality out of all the voices, including the hero. The Smitten is the counterpart to the damsel. To set the scene, Quiet decides to outright ignore the narrator's prompt to slay the princess on the first endgame loop. He leaves a pristine blade on the table upstairs and jumps straight towards trying to free the princess from her shackle. Because he's very upfront with his actions and intent to rescue, the princess is warm, friendly, and kind. Whenever Quiet tries to free the princess the first time around, the narrator tries to wrestle control from the player and push them towards slaying the princess. If the player refuses to follow through, the princess eventually mercy kills the Quiet with the blade. Her attacks are clumsy and uncoordinated. She's very gooey-eyed, sad, and remorseful the entire time. From here, Chapter 2 introduces the soft, demure damsel and the boisterous, passionate Smitten. The Smitten fancies himself a man deeply in love that would sacrifice the universe and existence itself for the sake of his beautiful maiden. He proclaims his intentions, feelings, and resolve loudly, proudly, and poetically. He's convinced himself that the Quiet is the star of the best love story yet to be written. It's his job to unite the Quiet with his lovely lady and get said love story started. The problem is that for what grand declarations Smitten makes, they're based on romantic and idealized concepts he dreamed up. He's so obsessed with the romance in his head that he doesn't recognize the reality of the situation, circumstances, or the princess. He doesn't actually know who the princess is, or what she wants. The princess herself is shaped and defined by how the Quiet perceives her. So, the damsel sits with her hands folded in her lap, surrounded by fluffy, frilly skirts in a basement fit for royalty. She has a more doll-like demeanor and look than the previous princess. While the previous princess wore an elegant dress and appeared clean despite being trapped for an unspecified time in a grungy basement, she was far more emotive and aware. She was nervous, reserved. The damsel is patient and doe-eyed, with a placid smile. The damsel is poured into the Smitten's ambiguous mold of a lovely, beautiful woman that just wants to make you happy. Whenever the Quiet talks to or asks the damsel what she wants or how she feels, she defers to him. Nothing happens unless the Quiet takes the lead, whether it's slipping off her shackle, taking her upstairs, guiding her outside. No matter what he asks, she immediately redirects and asks him what he wants or prefers. The damsel is a caricature of sexist ideas behind what a man expects when he wants a woman to submit to him. She's just an object, or a possession. Even in the Smitten's softer take on this sexist idea, the other voices offset him by seeing or recognizing the princess as a separate, autonomous being with her own thoughts, needs, and wants. What do you want? There's two people here. Escaping is a joint, collaborative effort. We should push towards helping each other meet mutual goals. When she insists that she just wants to make Quiet happy, she unravels and deteriorates. She makes herself smaller and flatter, all in the service of this impossible, one-dimensional picture of the perfect woman. She's compliant. She's agreeable. She might as well not only look like a doll, but become one too. Of course, Smitten doesn't recognize the horror surrounding her stripping away her personhood, as she keeps trying and trying to squeeze herself into a box that even she doesn't want to be shoved in. The Smitten claims that everything he's doing is a push towards a happy ending, princess. What does it mean for either of them to be happy, though? It's empty. It's a pretty illustration at the end of a fairy tale without the context of who these characters are, what their story is, and why their happy ending is compelling. The Smitten's vision is just a fixed endpoint. There's no substance. When the other voices challenge his worldview, and their pushback is joined by the princess herself, the Smitten doubles down. If he could recreate the vision in his head, even through force, everyone will see how perfect, pure, and crystalline it is. He knows what the ultimate happy ending looks like, and if everyone else could experience it with the same vivid clarity he does, they'd understand his goals. The damsel route is the only one that can branch into an epilogue instead of chapter 3. In a nutshell, the Smitten jumps ship to roost in the princess's consciousness and assert control over the looping construct the Quiet and princess are trapped in. The Smitten's cabin is somewhere between a cathedral filled with stained glass window art of the princess and a plush, comfortable castle. There are chandeliers, rug runners along the staircases, atmospheric candlelight, and tapestries depicting courtly romance between the Quiet and the princess. The princess is installed as the head of the household, but it's a figurehead role. She sits beneath the imposing shadow of the Smitten. He holds himself as a benevolent host, ready to meet every little whim of his guests. The truth is, he locked the princess and the Quiet in a gilded cage, and tries to ply them with sumptuous feasts and fantastic games and hope it makes an eternal prison feel more like a pleasure palace. The princess and the Quiet behave like actors or marionettes on strings, trying to appease the Smitten. He's intimidating, powerful, and it's an unnerving question how he might punish his performers if they don't play out his hopeless, vicarious fantasy. In Happily Ever After, the Smitten is set as a thematic parallel to the narrator. In a typical route, the narrator has similar goals of strong-arming the Quiet towards a specific vision of slay the princess and save the world. If the Quiet does as he requests, the narrator overpromises a reward, an eternity of blissful, uneventful solitude. Nothing happens, and nothing changes. Everything is frozen in time and place, like an insect fossilized in amber. The narrator is an echo of someone that feared death, change, and the march of time. Change means that everything he knew, the state of the world, will eventually be lost and fade away into nothing. Where the narrator wanted to avoid entropy, the Smitten refuses to acknowledge the reality of what any kind of relationship looks like. The Smitten wants a romance that's always sweet, happy, and passionate. Doesn't want to think about how couples get to know each other, how they learn to communicate, that there are times when people don't get along, or that they are two separate beings outside of their relationship. An eternity of domestic bliss is the same delicious feast and sparkling company, the thrills of an engaging board game, and the companionship is always pleasant. There's never a dull moment, a need for a moment apart, questioning if the couple is having a rough patch, or their dynamic is shifting away from the honeymoon phase. And then there's the unimaginable horror of whether the couple should stay together at all. As a passenger along for the ride, the narrator sees someone trying to repair the same ripped quilt over and over again, even though it's just a pile of rags and frayed thread. He's faced with what happily ever after looks like when it's a forced outcome. It isn't happily ever after. It's a futile, circular quest toward the idea that eternal happiness is possible if someone follows just the right rubric, or does a specific set of things. A being's sense of self and autonomy gets lost or discarded along the way. There's only one solution, one right answer. It takes being one of the actors or marionettes himself for the narrator to recognize the problems with his approach. The minute he removed free will and choice, he's subjecting the Quiet and the princess to the same crushing misery, intense fear, and hopelessness he thought he could prevent. Under the Smitten's ministrations, the princess and the Quiet are consumed by the vision of the perfect romance. There's no longer any one individual, empathy, compassion. It's one person's will. There's no room or consideration for anyone or anything else. There's supposed to be that pretty illustration at the end of a fairy tale. If it was drawn by an artist that doesn't understand the texture and structure of the story that built up to this single, swelling moment, when the Smitten finally relinquishes his hold, it's bittersweet. The Quiet and the princess were pulled towards his rosy vision as much as he was. He's a compelling salesman, even without the ability to craft the thing that lives up to his promises in grandiose language. The intense feeling of loss is trying to sort out where that spark died, if it ever existed, and if the two of them want to try and find it again. Though that sense of loss is tempered by relief that they don't have to pretend or hold up a facade. They can have a frank conversation that, no, this relationship wasn't working, and no, they don't know who the other person really is. Instead of placing each other on a tall, unreachable pedestal, they can actually look at who this other small, vulnerable being is. When the quiet and the princess dance in the starlight, it feels legitimately sweet, close, and intimate. It's a reciprocated request. It's two people actually having a moment and enjoying each other's presence, rather than trying to impress or live up to some unattainable, impossible vision. No bullshit. Just an honest, grounded, getting to know you. In the case of Ted or the Smitten, playing the knight in shining armor also involves placing their princess on an unreachable pedestal. She becomes a figure or an object rather than a living, breathing person with her own thoughts, feelings, and autonomy. And he's playing up the role to the chagrin or disappointment of an unseen, omniscient spectator. So, for everybody involved, be yourself. Don't play the knight. It takes two or more autonomous beings to defeat Anne, and to persuade the narrator that his vision isn't the ultimate, all-encompassing solution he wishes it was. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, please leave a comment and like the video. Share it, tell your friends. If you like what I'm cooking up, subscribe, ring the bell, add me to your RSS reader. If you're in a decent position and can do so or want to, I'd seriously appreciate you checking out my Patreon. I upload all my videos there too, and even if you join for free, no ads.